time to be the GOAT. It's time to enter God mode, man, let's get it going. I wanna be the greatest, energy is overflowing. I know I'm stoking the fire, my desire's taking over, not time.
Okay, you beautiful friends, welcome back to the Bag of the Semi Truck, and it's that time. We are jumping into part 6 of learning the lore of the Sonic the Hedgehog video game timeline. And we have been on quite a journey, but after this one, there might be a part 7. Just let me know down in the comments if there is a specific video that I should be watching that encompasses, hopefully I said that word right, all of the video game lore for the newest video game, because I think this, from Jay's reviews, will get me caught up completely the rest of the way up until the Sonic X Shadow Generations, long name that I don't feel like trying to remember, game. But it's all the way up until that one, I think. So we should be good. If we're not, by all means, if there's a little bit extra, please remember to jump down to the comments. Let me know if there's something else that's maybe missing, or maybe there's something there. But other than that, I don't know what else to say other than we need to jump into this and just get into it and see what kind of new lore I can learn, and cause everything from the classic era onward, it's all new to me. So I come from that generation of Sonic 1, 2, and 3, and a little bit of Knuckles, and just I didn't even play the Game Gear games and all the other games other than the ones for the Genesis. So that's what generation I come from. So that's what you're working with. And if you want to catch any specific era of Sonic and us learning the lore of that, we've got a playlist. It's Learning the Lore Sonic the Hedgehog playlist. There's 5 videos currently in there. With this one, there's going to be a 6th one. And then I've also got a second playlist of all my Learning the Lores, because I just got finished with another one of The Amazing World of Gumball. We're still waiting on that movie to come out. So, yeah. I mean, we've got a lot going on around here. So, I'm going to shut up, put these headphones on. We're going to start this. Where we last left off, we were, I think, Sonic Generations at the tail end of that. So, let's find out where we're going from here. Spin me around, and let's do this in 3, 2, 1, and play.
Right after Colors. But where this matter gets more intriguing is in relation to how it goes from Classic Sonic's perspective. Classic Sonic's appearance in Generations was meant to be a one-off, however he became a recurring character in 2 of the later games. So the implications of Generations on the games I discussed in part 1 is worth going into. Here's what we know. This is a version of Sonic who knows Tails, meaning that from the perspective of our timeline, Sonic 1, Sonic CD, and the 8-bit Sonic 2 have all taken place. However, Dr. Robotnik does not know Knuckles, nor does he recognize the modern look that Amy has. So therefore, I'm going to say that this Sonic has yet to experience Sonic 3. But on that note, Sonic 2 goes right into Sonic 3. So I'm going to say that Generations for Classic Sonic takes place between Sonic Chaos and Sonic 2 on the Genesis. Why that specifically? Well, Sonic 1, 2 on Game Gear, and Sonic Chaos all take place on South Island. And
pause. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the right words here, because from what I'm listening to, from what he's saying right here, I don't know how to figure out. So he's saying the classic Sonic from Generations is pulled from this point in the timeline. That's what I think he's trying to say. That the point that classic Sonic got taken away from and brought into the present with modern Sonic was from between those points. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go with. That's what I'm going to put in my head, is that's what he's saying for that part of Generations. But for modern Sonic and their perspective, it's going to be obviously after everything. So, okay. I didn't know what he was doing there for a second. I was kind of like, hold on, what are you doing? But I didn't want to pause and just completely interrupt. But what do I expect? I've got to pause a little bit and interrupt a little bit, or this is just me sitting here silently and letting a video play. And that's not what we're doing around here. We're learning the lore. If y'all do, though, want to watch his video without all my pausing and stopping, I will leave that link down in the description. So, jump down there, check it out, come back over here, and all that good stuff. Y'all know the drill by now when it comes to videos like these. So, let's continue and...
Classic Sonic was pulled into this story from Green Hill Zone, located on South Island. So we could then say that this is the moment he gets roped into the story. Now that would mean Classic Sonic had never faced the Death Egg robot before and had not gone supersonic yet. And yeah, that works for me. But the discussion doesn't stop there though. This creates a split in the timeline as a result of Classic Sonic traveling to the future, one where Generations takes place and then goes to Sonic 2. This is what I'm going to call the Neo-Classic timeline, a world where Classic Sonic's adventures play out largely like we saw them in the main timeline, but they don't lead to Sonic Adventure. Things go slightly differently. I would say the second most confusing part of Sonic's history behind the Eggman-Nega situation in the Rush and Rivals games is the world of Classic Sonic. When Classic Sonic returned in Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces, we were told this was the...
Pause. Okay, I did in the last part of learning the lore with the Sonic series, somebody did tell me and forewarned me that what Jay's Reviews was going to do was split it up and say that this created a whole new timeline and they're going to have two split timelines now. And seeing what they're meaning now, that for me, what I get the first time that they split the timeline off when, you know, Silver and Blaze came into the picture and stuff like that around that time period. I get doing that because it kind of works. I'm not a big fan of splitting timelines and having alternate timelines, split here and then now you got two of them. But this one doesn't really pan out that well. I don't know if I like the idea of creating a split timeline, because now you're just fracturing too many different timelines and you don't need to. Just say that Sonic came from right here in this point and move on from there. You don't have to add all these convoluted details into it just to make it work. I think some people are thinking far too much about these things. Don't get me wrong, he did the YouTube video, he did the work. You know, he's the one that put all this effort into it. But at the same time, you don't have to think about it this hard. It didn't create a split timeline. It's just, it happened, and now they're back in the past. Maybe their memory just got wiped somehow. Who knows? You know, that's the easy way to say it. When you move back to the... But then again, they did appear in 2 more games, he said. I don't know. Let's see what he says. Let's continue and...
Same Classic Sonic from Sonic Generations, only now he isn't from Sonic's past, he comes from another dimension that is Classic Sonic themed. So while the classic adventures were still canon to the main timeline I've been discussing, there is a separate world where SA1 doesn't happen and we get more Classic Sonic stuff. It's in this case where I feel like official statements help, but can be freely tossed out if it allows the timeline to make more sense. Like I said in part 1, the people who officially run Sonic and just have whatever games they want made, and then the people whose job it is to promote Sonic explain it in a way that makes sense at that moment in time. Then it's up to us to make sense of it. But it could all be changed later. Generations said outright that it was a time travel story, Forces playing it to where Classic Sonic was always from another world. Recently, it was stated that now it's been changed to where there is no Classic Sonic world at all, and that Mania and Forces from the perspective of Classic Sonic are just part of the past in the main timeline. This directly contradicts what's in those games, so how do I make sense of it personally? Well, I'm taking a little bit of everything in order to keep the timeline making sense. I don't think Sonic Mania is canon to modern Sonic's timeline for reasons I'll discuss when we get to that game in a few moments. So I'm going in with the explanation that Generations creates a split timeline for Classic Sonic that runs alongside the main timeline we've been discussing. Another world from a certain point of view. After Generations, Sonic 2 is next in the timeline, then Sonic 3 and Knuckles in Triple Trouble. But now we can add games from the 90s back into the lore that I left behind in part 1, starting with Knuckles' Chaotix and the 32X. This game...
Okay, pause. Okay, so... I appreciate the lore that I'm getting and the explanation of the games that I'm getting, but I really feel like he's convoluting it way too much, and it doesn't need to be convoluted to the point where it's like, oh, now I can do this because now I could fit it into this timeline instead. But I mean, I got a feeling he can make this one work with the chaotics, but couldn't we just throw them into the timeline the whole time, since it didn't really have nothing to do with Sonic anyway with, you know, chaotics. It didn't have nothing to do with Sonic, so you could literally just throw that anywhere in there. You don't have to fit it in as if it's part of some grand story. I mean, they had to be introduced somewhere. So just say, it happened around this time period. It doesn't have to be complicated. But let's go ahead and listen to how complicated he's making it by splitting it off into yet another timeline. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the timeline split things. That's what's bothering me the most right now. But at least I was forewarned in the last video that he was going to do this. So let's continue. And
The game is one I tossed out in the main timeline because it debuted the Chaotix, but Sonic Heroes rebooted them completely and later games stuck with the Heroes Chaotix. But in a timeline where things aren't leading to SA1, you don't have to worry about it. Set a few months after 3K and Triple Trouble, Knuckles teams up with SBO, Charmy, Vector, and Mighty the Armadillo to stop the Doctor and Metal Sonic from using the Chaos Rings on a new island that has come up from the sea. Sonic and Tails must have been on vacation this month or something. This is one of the more obscure Sonic games released on the 32X, an add-on for the Genesis that sold supremely poorly, and the game has never been re-released, not even once. I think it's because the game is terrible. I can't think of one reason it would never be included in a compilation besides that. It looks like the classic Sonic games, but it's just so boring to play with its 25 samey stages where you wander around looking for the goalpost, not doing any platforming or going fast or anything. It's no good, this one. So from this point, you then have the games I discussed in Part 1, Tails Sky Patrol, and Sonic Labyrinth. We can take advantage of this time that Sonic and Tails are on separate adventures to toss in another game I left out in Part 1. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, an arcade game from 1993 where you used a trackball to control Sonic through deadly traps as he's been captured by Robotnik along...
Pause. I was hoping to get more information about the Chaotix game, but okay, I guess that's what we're going to do, is just say it's in this timeline. I barely got any stories, so I can't even remember what it was about. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're just rushing through them now, and that for me, it sucks to just rush through them. And because when I do these learning the lores, what I'm wanting is hours upon hours of material that we can all just sit down together, watch it together. Of course, I'm the one that has to pause, but I'm just wanting to sit down and absorb all of that lore. I want to take it a little slower and just absorb it all. But he literally just said 2 or 3 sentences about it and says, the game was terrible, moving on. That's not much, but I am interested in this arcade game where you're, controlling it with a little roller ball, like, the arcade game where it was golf and you were golfing, but you were hitting. I don't see how that actually works now when you're spinning the roller ball to golf, but whatever. I think it was Golden Tee. That's what I think it was. But it's an interesting concept of a roller ball, and you pretty much the faster you roll the ball is probably faster Sonic will go. I don't know. We'll figure it out, and let me listen and find out more about this arcade game. I didn't know they had an arcade cabinet for Sonic, so...
Inside 2 new characters, Mighty the Armadillo, who later appeared in Knuckles as Chaotix, and with them is Ray the Flying Squirrel. I've never played this game as it was arcade only, but I'm mentioning it here because Mighty and Ray are exclusive to the Neo Classic Sonic timeline, as stated by Iizuka himself back in 2017 when Mania was a few months away from release. Which will become relevant later, I promise. Sega Sonic doesn't have much going on, I just needed to bring it up to establish that Mighty and Ray exist. Another arcade game I skipped over before was Sonic the Fighters, released in 1996, built off the engine of Sega's other game, Virtual Fighter, and it certainly looks it. Not in a derogatory way, I'm just saying that this game looks like some mid-90s 3D and I find it pretty charming. This one I have played, first being re-released in the Sonic Gems collection on the GameCube, but then getting its own PS3 and Xbox 360 port in 2012. Not sure why this game of all things got that, but it's pretty fun in a simplistic way as you fight against other Sonic characters in a tournament with these really cartoony sound effects and animations. The reason being that Robotnik has launched a new Death Egg, and Tails' rocket has only one seat, so the characters decide the only natural course of action is to fight against each other to see who will board the shuttle. Each character granting the victor, your chosen character, a Chaos Emerald as you end the game with a battle against Metal Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. This game debuted new characters, Bean the Dynamite, a duck who's proficient in explosives, and Bark the Polar Bear, easily the most difficult character to beat in the game. Bang also returns from Triple Trouble, one of his few appearances outside of that game. Espio is included, so this game can only be included in a world where Chaotix is canon, so here we are. The only odd thing with this game is that there are 8 Chaos Emeralds in it, but the game is structured in a way where you have to fight every character in a set order. When you reach the spot where you'd fight the character you're playing as, you have to fight a clone of that character made by Robotnik. This is how you get the 8th Emerald. So I say we can just pretend that doesn't happen and proceed like normal, placing this game after Sega Sonic, and before the last couple classic Sonic games, Sonic 3D Blast.
Balls. Okay, so a Sonic fighting game nowadays with, you know, stuff like Smash Brothers and stuff like that, I think a Sonic fighting game could work with the vast array of characters that we have in the Sonic universe. But back then, with what they were going for, I don't think the fighting game works. Plus, with the clips he was showing, it only looked like all you can do is punch, 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 punch. And that was pretty much it. And maybe a spin dash or two, or there didn't seem like much you could do with actually fighting. So yeah, I think that it would work for nowadays. Maybe a Smash Brothers type of video game with Sonic characters. Granted, I know that Sonic is in Smash and all that, but I say bank off of the fandom that is Sonic the Hedgehog and just put a bunch of characters in a Sonic fighting game in the style of, you know, Smash Brothers. It could work. I mean, granted, you might be targeting only one specific demographic, but it's a moneymaker. So I say make it. And as far as him splitting this timeline off, I get where he's coming from, and I see what he's doing now. But at the same time, I'm still personally not a fan of the split timeline stuff. I don't like it. It just convolutes everything. It's like, why can't we just have all of this stuff be part of the classic era and call that Classic Sonic, and, you know, just let that just be its own timeline, and then once adventures start, it starts a new, you know, it doesn't start a new timeline, but it continues forward, but for a modern era. Pretty much in a nutshell, it's just time travel. You don't have to create a whole new timeline for something that's time travel. You just, this is where all the games are, so this is about where they would be. But he wants to create a timeline to make it fit some sort of extended story, instead of just saying, there's not much of a story, this is where it goes. Because let's be real, the Sonic arcade game, no story. I don't know about Chaotix, but, and then there's a couple others that he had in there. Oh, the fighting game, just like Sonic R, the racing game of Sonic, where they're just running, and that's it. That stuff is just, yeah. I'm trying to find the right words here to continue, but it just, you didn't have to create a second timeline for it. In my head, since he's allowed to do it, he's allowed to, he even said it in here, you know, if it doesn't work, I ain't keeping it. Well, he didn't say it that way, but he said something in the same gist of what I'm about to say. He can have it split off, but for me, I ain't having it split off. This is just past events, and that's where Classic Sonic comes from, is from the classic era. Now, does it fit 100%? I don't know, but in my head, that's my head canon. I'm going to go with that. I don't care about the whole splitting it off thing. It doesn't matter to me. So, let's continue. And
Sonic Blast and Sonic R, which we went over in part 1. Finally, leading to the first new game in the Neo-Classic timeline, Sonic Mania. This time, Robotnik has found a magical rock buried on Angel Island called the Phantom Ruby, which has the ability to alter reality, used in the game to turn these egg robos into a group called the Hard-Boiled Heavies, as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles fight against them. The Phantom Ruby warping reality to where the trio must run through areas from South Island, West Side Island, Little Planet, and Angel Island like Green Hill Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, Stardust Speedway, and Hydro City Zone, and more, alongside new areas. While this game doesn't have much plot, instead focusing on being a perfect throwback to the old games in a gameplay sense, its many references to the history of classic Sonic are the linchpin in the whole Neo-Classic timeline. For example, in Mirage Saloon, you battle against the Heavy Magician who can create illusions. In the boss fight, she uses this power to look like Fang, Bean, and Bark, confirming that Sonic the Fighters is a game to include in this new timeline. Then, in Stardust Speedway, you race against Metal Sonic, but he transforms into Metal Sonic Kai at the end of it. This was the final boss of Knuckles' Chaotix, so that game is also one I added for that reason. At the end of the game, Dr. Robotnik gets into a battle with the Heavy King over the Phantom Ruby as Sonic becomes Super Sonic to fend them both off. But this causes a reaction where the Phantom Ruby opens up a portal that pulls Sonic inside of it. A cliffhanger for the good ending of Sonic Mania that was meant to lead into the game that was coming out in a couple months' time from then, Sonic Forces, where classic Sonic was set to appear once more. However, to discuss Sonic Forces, we have to go back to the main timeline and work our way there with modern Sonic, who we last left off at Sonic Generations. The very next game was Sonic Lost World on the Wii U in 2013. Never liked this one back when it came out, always thought it was a boring Mario clone with Sonic elements in it and had a pretty conflicted story that tried to do too much in too small a time. But hey, that does mean this segment will be short. Sonic and Tails are seen chasing after Eggman, who's once again assisted by Orbot and Cubot. Eggman is back to his roots of collecting animals by putting them in badniks, but this chase leads to the Lost Hex, a floating collection of hexagons that all have different environments: grasslands, deserts, beaches, forests, volcanoes, and flying desert. The Lost Hex is home to the Zeti, or the Deadly Six: Zavok, Zaz, Xena, Zor, Zomom, and Zik. These folks are under the command of Eggman via the magic conch shell, until Sonic punts it into the stratosphere, as the Deadly Six then turn on Eggman and plan on using his machines to completely drain the world of all its resources and energy, destroying all life on Earth, causing Sonic and Tails to team up with Eggman to put a stop to it. Along the way, Tails is captured by the Six, and they try turning him into a robot, but he reprograms the machine while they aren't looking to make that not happen, and once the Zeti are defeated, Eggman fights Sonic and loses, the world is saved, Sonic and Tails go home, and Sonic takes a nap, ending Sonic Lost World.
Pause. Okay. I was trying to find a good spot in there to pause because there didn't seem to be much to actually comment on. He is correct about Lost World. It doesn't feel like there's a lot to it to really extrapolate on. I mean, it seems like a paint-by-numbers little story, but we do get introduced to some new characters there, so that's a good thing. I can't remember exactly what they were called, but I'll get to be able to remember those names when I go back over this and edit everything together and all that stuff. So I'll remember their name when I do that. But we do get introduced to that, and it looked like they tried to do a different game mechanic as well. So at least they're experimenting a little bit when it comes to doing new games for Sonic. In fact, I completely forgot about Sonic Lost World. I'm kind of glad he mentioned it because I completely forgot. So, yeah. Either way, let's continue. And
Lost World is another one of those very self-contained stories. However, we know it's after Sonic Colors because of the joke I mentioned earlier, but would also be after Generations because Colors leads into that game. The Deadly Six never really caught on as a team. In my opinion, it was because the game doesn't do much with them outside of being boss characters with a single sentence or even single word personality. However, Zavok himself will become a recurring character in the games going forward, so that's something that has come from Sonic Lost World, a game that goes right after Generations in the timeline, leading to Sonic Forces. We did just skip from 2013 to 2017, and that's because in between we had the Sonic Boom brand that also never took off, despite the 3 years of time dedicated to it. But on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, Sonic Team was back with Sonic Forces, and this time was going to be a return to the bigger stories from the games of old. Eggman has found the perfect way to take over the world this time, the Phantom Ruby, which he finds on his doorstep one.
balls. Okay, so we are skipping the Sonic Boom franchise, and if I remember from his first video, he isn't adding anything in that involves like a television show or something like that tie-in, because the Sonic Boom games did tie into Sonic Boom series, which I did a few reactions to a few episodes of Sonic Boom. I enjoyed the show for what it was, but it just, oh my gosh. Was it around that time where they made Knuckles to look like an idiot when he really isn't an idiot? He's just a warrior from, another world. So, I don't know. That's what's popping in my head right now. But at the same time, he says he isn't, doing any cross, platform type stuff, such as video games, TV shows, movies, all that. But what I've got on the screen, hopefully it's on y'all's screen too, because I've said this before, when I edit these together, sometimes it's just slightly a millisecond off, and the picture's different. But what we got is a slide from the comic book series with Eggman holding an emerald. So, is he adding something from the comic book? Because that's a completely different lore. Which, I don't know if there's anybody out there that goes over the lore of the comic book series, but holy crap, that would take a long time as well, because you've got the Archie comics and you got the IDW comics, and they both ran for a long time, each of them. So, yeah. And I don't know if y'all heard that noise outside, but I do drive a semi-truck. So outside noise, it might creep in. Hopefully it didn't. Either way, let's continue, because we're on Sonic Forces now, because he's skipping over Sonic Boom completely. We're in 2017, which means 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. We might have another game. Well, I know we got another game to deal with, so I'm going to shut up. Let's continue. And
Day. This being the version of the Phantom Ruby from the main timeline. In the classic timeline, it was used by Robotnik and Mania. Eggman fuses it with a mercenary called Infinite the Jackal, and with their combined strength, they're going to take over the world. Overpowering and capturing Sonic, as Infinite uses the Phantom Ruby not only to become powerful himself, but creates illusions of Shadow, Metal Sonic, Zavok, and Chaos that Sonic has to contend with. Infinite was once a regular mercenary hired by Eggman, but got beat by Shadow the Hedgehog so badly that he was desperate for more power, which was revealed in the DLC chapter called Episode Shadow. 6 months after Sonic's defeat, the rest of the cast, Knuckles, Amy, Tails, Rouge, Silver, and the Chaotix, work to fight against the Eggman Empire, which has taken over 99% of the world. As a new recruit joins their ranks following his survival from one of Infinite's attacks. This is your custom character. He can look and appear however you want, and I shall refer to him as the Avatar. The Avatar is tasked with rescuing Sonic from the Death Egg, which brings Sonic back into the fight. Meanwhile, Tails gets attacked by Chaos, but at that moment, a Phantom Ruby portal opens up as classic Sonic comes through to save the day. You play as modern Sonic, classic Sonic, and the Avatar to take back the world from Eggman. Sounds cool and all, but this game's main issue is that the plot is very rushed.
Pause. Okay, so when he said introduce the new character, that threw me off, because I was looking at the character that was there, and it's like, what the heck is this blank slate looking at me like this? And I didn't even know. I might have to actually grab this game, and I doubt I'll ever have the time within the next year or so. But I want to play this game strictly for the creating a character mode. I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog and creating your own character. I mean, we still don't even have that for Fortnite. Fortnite, by the way, get on that. You can have a create your own character mode. We don't have to have all these freaking, granted, I know they got all these skins because they make a ton of money off of them. All this stuff, but come on, where is the create a skin mode? That's what y'all need. Heck, for all I care, make it a, make it something that you got to pay for, extra downloadable stuff, like $4.99 or something. I'll pay $5 to create my own skin. I don't know. Either way, I like the idea of that, but at the same time, does it really work? Because your character will no longer show up in any other game unless they do this for every other game thereafter, and you can import your character into that slot. So I don't know, I like the idea, but I just feel like it doesn't work. I don't know. Let's continue. And
cutscenes feeling too short to give the plot much time to breathe, and despite the shorter running time and more focused premise, Some things still don't make sense, like in the games that had more complicated stories, such as Shadow just showing up to reveal that the Phantom Ruby projects physical illusions. It's never explained how he went from beating up Infinite a few months ago to then hearing of Infinite's plan right before the game to going AWOL for 6 months. But either way, at this moment the heroes stand no chance against the Phantom Ruby until they find a way to nullify its power. But by that point, the Doctor has activated his final scheme of creating a virtual sun to kill everyone as the heroes lead an assault on Eggman's Imperial Tower. But they shut down that sun thing in the nick of time, and Sonic fights Infinite alongside the Avatar. They couldn't beat him alone, but together they could, the one thing Infinite lacked. As Infinite is then absorbed into the Phantom Ruby, I think, Eggman's final mech is fully powered by the Phantom Ruby as the Sonics along with the Avatar destroy it, saving the world as classic Sonic is returned to where he belongs, while the rest of the cast can look towards fixing the damage done by the Eggman Empire, the Avatar taking off to parts unknown once all is said and done. With it being the next game, and because Zavok is used as a Phantom Ruby illusion, we can safely slot this game right after Sonic Lost World, and then right after Sonic Mania and Classic Sonic's timeline. And while we're there, we should wrap that up. Following Forces, we got several things related to Sonic.
Pause, okay. Now we're about to jump into the weeds again and get very convoluted, but nonetheless, back over there to that one. Holy crap, I'll tell y'all the good honest truth, I feel like I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about all this, but yeah, then I just kind of lost my train of thought because, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say. So, unfortunately, I stopped for nothing. Sorry about that, but at the same time, just completely brain malfunction just then. So I guess we're going, we're back to this convoluted mess, and this time it's Sonic Mania Adventures, which I don't know what that means for us. Maybe he's going to put it at the beginning of Adventures timeline. I don't know. Let's see what kind of timeline split shenanigans he can have. So,
Mania, including YouTube shorts called Sonic Mania Adventures and a physical edition of the game called Sonic Mania Plus. The first episode of Mania Adventures shows classic Sonic's return from Forces, however Sonic Mania Plus included a new mode called Encore Mode which also shows classic Sonic's return from Forces, where he then teams up with Mighty and Ray, who are back in the games now, alongside Tails and Knuckles to travel through altered versions of the stages to once again stop the Phantom Ruby from being misused. If you remember the rules I outlined at the very beginning, this video concerns games only, so therefore Mania Encore Mode takes precedent, going after Forces in the Neo-Classic timeline, which is the last we're going to hear of that timeline for the rest of the video. So now we can just focus on the main timeline with Modern Sonic for the final two games.
thank goodness, because honestly, I was getting tired of all these, the Neo-Classic era and this and that. It's like, oh my gosh, give me a break. But Sonic Forces, I wish I could remember, you know, if you've been here with this video this long, and if you've seen the rest of these Learning the Lore videos, then you already know that, I'm sorry for losing my train of thought there, but my goodness. I saw what was coming, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to go back into this split timeline, this Neo-Classic era, this and that. But thank goodness, he's done with that, and yeah, now we can continue. And this time we got Sonic Racing. And this time it looks like they're actually racing. There's no running like in Sonic R as your racer. It's an actual car. So let's continue and see what happens. And
games. First up, Team Sonic Racing. This is a game I've never played. I didn't like Lost World when it came out, I hated the boom stuff, and thought Forces was pretty lame as well. So therefore, I decided to not pick up Team Sonic Racing since I didn't think it looked very good either. However, it included a story mode where the heroes are in a car racing competition run by a tanuki called Dodon Pa, who may seem suspicious but is actually above board, and Eggman is the villain again. The cast is divided into teams of 3 like usual in this series. I bring it up because Zavok is seen on Eggman's team, and this is the real Zavok, unlike Forces. The games never really say what happened to the other Deadly Six members, and more importantly, that Zavok no longer has a vendetta against Eggman like he did in Sonic Lost World. But despite that, the plot of this one was confirmed canon, first in the Encyclopedia as one of its racetracks has wreckage from the war and Forces, and then it's mentioned in Sonic Frontiers. So that means we can put this game right between Sonic Forces and finally, Sonic Frontiers. Since this game just came out, I'll again issue a
balls. I don't know. know, maybe the Sonic Racing should have went a little bit, kind of, not Sonic Forces, but the Sonic Racing, since the, oh gosh, what the frick was his name? The villain from the Sonic, daggone it, I can't remember his freaking name now. What the heck happened in the second half of this video? Either way, y'all know who I mean. The ones from the Sonic, Billy, get your stuff together. I don't know, a few games ago, where he says that the villains were never mentioned again, but this one was. There we go, that's a good way to put it. That guy. Since he says that he wasn't feuding with Eggman no more, maybe he was still on Eggman's team. So maybe we can kind of just slide this in there where, right during? No, we can't do that. We got to have it after all that, because I talk about he's making things more convoluted, when really what I'm doing here is really convoluting it up. I was going to say drop it into not Sonic Forces, but not Sonic Frontier. That's what we're about to be getting into. But Sonic, whatever the frick that game was, the one that I said had looked like it was trying new game mechanics with all the hexagonal stuff and this and that. I was going to say try to put it inside that game somehow, but that would really make a mess of everything. So let's just stick with what Jay's reviews did. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to get my brain on straight while we listen to him talk about Sonic Frontiers for just a moment. So continue and play.
Spoiler warning. Skip to this timestamp to get past it. The opening cutscene of Frontiers shows Eggman on the Starfall Islands interacting with some cyberspace technology that traps him inside of it, as he relies on his cyber program turned life form called Sage. By watching the Frontiers prologue animation on YouTube, you can then see that Knuckles found some ruins on Angel Island that were also part of this same system that brought him head-to-head with the technology of the Ancients and Sage herself, as Knuckles also gets trapped in cyberspace. The Chaos Emeralds were drawn to the Starfall Islands as Sonic, Tails, and Amy set out to explore them, which results in them being sent to cyberspace, where Sonic escapes and is told by a voice in the sky that he can rescue his friends by collecting the Chaos Emeralds and becoming Super Sonic to defeat the Titans that guard every island.
Balls. Okay, so now that he mentioned Super Sonic, that reminds me of what I was going to say about frickin' a minute ago whenever I was pausing it, because Sonic and them defeated Eggman yet again, but it seems like he hasn't mentioned Super Sonic hardly at all in this, where Sonic, you know, turns into Super Sonic and all that at the end of the games. And I'm like, wow. In my head, I was thinking as I was watching that, I was like, wow, Sonic hasn't turned into Super Sonic in a while. When are we going to see that again? And lo and behold, it starts in Frontier. Now, how that's going to pan out, since they say this was at the beginning and it was a cutscene at the beginning of this game, that seems a little odd. I don't know. Either way, though, I mean, we got like 4 or 5 minutes left of this video, so I say I should shut up and try to just continue on without talking too much. I'm gonna try to pause maybe 5 more times at the most. Let's see if I can hold myself to that. Really doubt it, but let's do this and play.
Sonic Frontiers is the first game in a while to feel like it's part of an ongoing series. I mean, this is the first Sonic Team game in a long time where they try to make past events relevant to the characters in the present. The first game in a while to use the Chaos Emeralds and Super Sonic as important parts of the story. The first game in a very long time that tries delivering lore that further fleshes out our understanding of the Sonic universe. Throughout the game, we learn about the Ancients from tens of thousands of years ago, descending from another planet that used the power of the Chaos Emeralds to battle against a malevolent force called the End, fleeing their home and arriving on Earth, drawn to the power of the Master Emerald, which is apparently a separate entity from the Chaos Emeralds entirely. But the End had followed the Ancients to Earth, and the Titans they created couldn't stop the End, so they sealed it in cyberspace, which they created. The player can unlock these memos that Eggman recorded while he was in cyberspace, and it's here where we learn that Riders is evidently canon and all the other tidbits that I went over in part 2. But he also talks about how the Ancients were the distant ancestors of Chaos. The Ancients migrated to Angel Island and due to radiation devolved into the Chao, and as established, Chaos was a mutated Chao himself. Now, The ancients bringing the emeralds to Earth from another planet tens of thousands of years ago works in theory until you remember that Unleashed claimed that dark and light Gaia fought for millions of years with the temples and the emeralds. But if you just headcanon the ancients to predate that, then you're good. The ancients left behind on the Starfall Islands have their spirits represented by the Cocos that you help during the game, putting their spirits at ease. While in cyberspace, Eggman is protected from all the threats by Sage, who he starts to feel a father-like affection for, realizing he created intelligent life. Although by that metric, I feel like he'd be pretty proud of Metal Sonic, but that's neither here nor there.
Pause. Okay, so I didn't know when I was going to pause it again, but I don't know why I'm feeling the need to pause it and commentate over top of. He probably didn't feel the same way about Metal Sonic because that was a machine and it was cold and, you know, kind of callous, and just, it just wasn't the same as what you're projecting on screen with seeing that he's kind of created an artificial life, yes, but he's creating something that's different than Metal Sonic. Metal Sonic was a robot. Let's be real. This is something different than a robot. So I feel like I understand where Eggman's coming from. Granted, do I feel like Eggman's like a paternal figure? Not at all. But I could see mentally, you know, the difference. And one thing, before I continue too much, one thing I do like, I know this game was also for the PS5. I do like the fact that we're not getting ultra realistic with the Sonic franchise. I know they tried to do that to a small degree with Adventure, and the human, that's what threw me off so much about the humans in that game. They just looked too humanistic instead of, you know, kind of like Sonic and the rest of them. They didn't look cartoony enough, let's just say that. And I like that even though it's PS5, the graphics still aren't so crisp that it feels like you're watching a movie. Which, by the way, I have watched the first two movies, finally. And you know what? I like Sonic 1 better than Sonic 2. That's just me, though. Maybe I like Sonic 3 better whenever that finally comes to streaming. Because at this point, I'm not going to go watch it at the theaters. Either way, let's continue and play. Aw, messed that up. Let's try again. 3, 2, 1, and
there. As in the end, the voice guiding Sonic actually was the End, who did help Sonic free his friends, but the catch was that the End is freed from cyberspace as Super Sonic and Sage team up to destroy the thing. And while I thought the final boss was kind of a mess, all these energy beams going all over the screen, the moment was pretty cool as you get I'm Here, then the new vocal themes playing in the background. This game has plenty of cool vocal themes, but this one took the cake for me. But in the end, Sage sacrificing herself, saddening Eggman to the point where he's seen in the post-credits scene finding a way to bring her back online, while the heroes set off for the next adventure, ending Sonic Frontiers, the latest game in the series, so the final game in the timeline as of 2022. With that said, I suppose it's time to wrap things up. In conclusion, what did we learn here? Is Sonic the Hedgehog the greatest story ever told? No, not at all. In fact, half of this video saga was spent filling holes with headcanon when things stopped making sense as early as the very beginning of the franchise. Nobody working on the physics system of Sonic 1 in 1991 had any idea that this would become a series about god monsters and time travel and different dimensions and planets or...
Balls. So, with what he's saying there, that is definitely correct. In all the way back then, they had zero clue that Sonic was going to be nearly as humongous as he became. And Sonic as a franchise is just humongous. It's almost equivalent as Mario or Link or, trying to think of other franchises, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, My Little Pony. I got the pillow right here, that's why it got in my head. It's Sonic's own level with all of them. And with that tiny little game all the way back in 1991, I agree with him. They had no idea what they had on their hands. So they weren't thinking that there was going to be some big overarching story for the next 30 years. So, yeah, let's continue. And
any of that other stuff. But the franchise slowly evolved into those things as time went on. At the beginning of this video series, I said that while I think of the reason we're wasting oxygen on the topic of Sonic lore, I was going to present it to you. When I wrote that line, it was just supposed to be a joke to get us into the video, knowing the futility of the topic, but here I am at the end and I realize what the reason was. It's not because I'm here to convince anyone that Sonic needs to be preserved alongside the works of Shakespeare, it's because it's the ultimate tribute to the series that I could do. Thinking back on it, why did I like Sonic as a kid? It wasn't even the sense of speed or replayability or any of that. Those are things I enjoy about the games now, but back then it was purely about the characters and the world they inhabited. There was no series quite like it, doing such epic quests with these well-designed and fun characters. Sonic was just a unique blend of different elements, and that mixture was something really special. There still isn't a series like Sonic. The name of the retrospective is Sonic is Distinctive, and that's something I've been saying since 2020. My reasoning as to why has evolved in those last 2.5 years, but right now I see it like this. Sonic is a franchise with a unique talent for inspiring people to talk about it, share their memories with it, and make new ones entirely through fan works. The Sonic fan base has produced an infamously large amount of toxicity, but also a lot of beauty via art and fan.
Okay, so I don't know anything about the art or the fan games. I'm currently searching. I think I found one fan animation of Sonic, but I'm definitely searching for fan animation stuff that lasts more than like 30 seconds to a minute and a half. I'm looking for like a 5 to 10 minute animation where I could be like, oh, you know what? This is made by a fan. This is on the same level as a My Little Pony, fandom. This is on the same level as, let's see, what's another fandom right now? rwby. That fandom does their own animations. They do music. rwby's a weird fandom sometimes, if I'm being honest. They're a great fandom, but at the same time, I don't know how to describe it. But My Little Pony, great fandom, but be careful getting into some of the stuff that those fans do, because just be careful. That's all I could say. But great artist. The fandom in the Brony community, sorry to bash the Sonic fans, but I have not seen Sonic fans as, I'm trying to find the right words here. Sonic fans, there's so many of them. They're great, and I'm sure that the talent is there between the artist and the game developing and the animation and all this. I'm sure it's there. I just have never seen it on the level that the Brony community does. I mean, from music to animations to just animatic storytelling to just the artwork, just everything. I mean, there's some of them that make plushies of their characters that are way leagues better than Hasbro ever does. But, maybe now that I'm diving into the Sonic fandom, maybe I'll see more of it. And I can actually be like, yeah, they're kind of on the same level. But all that to say, I am currently looking for fan animations. So if you know of any fan animations, drop some links down below and I'll try to look into them. And if it's something that looks like it'll catch my attention pretty good, maybe I'll do a reaction. I don't know. So either way, let's continue. And I'm probably going to just let it play out from here, because it looks like it's only like a minute and a half left. And he's just giving his afterthoughts anyway. So I'm just going to shut up and let's hope I let him finish out. And
games and such. The franchise has such a unique ability to survive disaster after disaster because of those characters and that world that people got sucked into when they were a kid, that keeps them loyal to the brand, even when things might not go in the direction you like. I don't like every game I just spent the last 2.5 hours going over. Some of them I was borderline making fun of while writing about them. But the series is cool. There is nothing quite like it, as I said. So that's why I did this project. I felt like my reviewing Forces and Frontiers wouldn't be a fitting end to this years-long journey of talking about Sonic on my channel. No, I wanted to do something big by paying tribute to the thing that made me love Sonic to begin with. The kind of video series I would have eaten up when I was 8 years old, treating every game as though they were equally valid, despite some being blatantly goofy, budget, unfinished, or whatever, or if they were serious genre-defining classics. Since I liked the Sonic series, and I thought there would be no better way to end the Sonic era of Jay's reviews than this. I'm not done talking about Sonic forever, since like I said, I'm still a fan, and I'll still cover whatever games they do next. I want to talk about the multimedia Sonic projects that have existed over the decades, and perhaps keep talking about the fan games, especially PO6. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to play that Silver release, but before I get ahead of myself, I'm just saying that now we're pretty much done covering all the games. I'm pretty content with the work I did over these last 2 years as we keep moving forward with the channel, covering games I'm just as, if not plenty more passionate about than this. If you made it this far into the video, and have been following the Sonic Retrospective for however long you have been, I'll say what I always do. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.
Okay, so there we go. We are 6 videos into learning the lore of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's been quite a journey. I've even lost my train of thought in this video. Y'all seen that earlier if y'all stayed around. And, oh my goodness. For me, I personally want to do one more part, a part 7, just to get the video game lore, because I know they've already done it already. Everyone's already played Sonic X Shadow and all that stuff, so everyone's played it. I'm wanting to now get one little lore video that's roughly 20 minutes long, maybe even 10 to 15, you know, something short and sweet to kind of end this series on. And if the next game comes out, you know, do another one on that and call it part 8 if necessary. I don't know, but as of right now, this is going to complete the series after part 7 with Sonic X Shadow Generations and all that stuff. So yeah, this has definitely been a journey. I know I'm talking right now as if this is just the end of the Sonic learning the lore. I know I got another part to do, but my goodness, we've gone from my generation with classic Sonic and, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog #1, 2, where Tails, well, no, Tails wasn't introduced in #2, but 2 for me, and then 3 with Sonic and Knuckles, and all the way to Adventures. And I'm interested in Adventures still, 1 and 2. I wouldn't mind playing them. What I really want to do is just get a Dreamcast and, you know, Xbox and PlayStation and N64, Sega, Saturn. I want to just get all the old systems and just kind of put them in my little spare room and just have that there so I can actually buy the old games themselves and actually play them on the original systems. But that costs a lot of money. One of the things, though, that I found pretty interesting was, of course, you had an arcade game out there that was, you know, like a rollerball arcade game. That was pretty interesting. The fact that Eggman tries to create amusement parks and an amusement world as well. That was freaking interesting, which, of course, now I had the idea of, like, hey, why are we not having a game for Eggman in the same style as Wario has a game for himself? An Eggman type game like that, it could be a party game. You play the daggone games that are at the park, the amusement park, and actually, you know, turn it into like Mario Party or something. I really don't know how to do that game, but my goodness, there's just so much potential there for just a fun little, you don't have to call it Dr. Robotnik's Eggman. Oh, actually, you could do that. That could be y'all's title, Sega. Dr. Robotnik's Eggman Land. And it's just craziness. I don't know. But there was a lot of stuff in there. What if you made it this far by some weird reason that you were able to tolerate me this long? Let me know down in the comments, what's your favorite Sonic moment from the game franchise? And yeah, that's the best question I can think of off the top of my head. But for me, it's almost 9 o'clock in the evening. I need to shut this down, call the wife, and just talk to her the rest of the night and all that good stuff. So I'm stopping, and I'm going to get this thing out the way. It's a little table here in the truck that I kind of have in the way, but I'm going to get that out the way. I'm going to get up, stretch my legs, all that good stuff as well before I call the wife. And I'm passing it off to y'all now. Y'all know the drill by now. Hit that like, tickle to subscribe, Don't be texting and driving. Watch what you love and love what you watch. And take it away, Mr. Rogers.
I like you just the way you are.